comfortably zoned with the Zigzag Man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, where it's a little colder, and we're in the East Bay. It's a little warmer. Much warmer today for me because I'm talking to a fellow Heightsman. Now, unless you're from Jackson Heights, New York, you probably don't know what a Heightsman is, but we all have that same bond. Glenn Hirsch, how are you, sir?
Okay, Ralph, good to hear your voice once again.
Yeah, back to these airwaves. Glenn, this is kind of a sad, bittersweet talking to you today, but you came to mind for me yesterday when heard about the tragic passing of Don Rickles, who was from the same neighborhood you and I were from, went to the same shul as you probably did.
Absolutely. Let me tell you something, Ralph. As also being a comedian, and the comedy world is in mourning. I mean, if you go on Facebook, you'll see it. It's just story after story, experience after experience about Don Rickles. But coming from his neighborhood, or him coming from our neighborhood, was always a sense of pride. Very.
Absolutely.
And you know what? We were always so proud. Even as crazy as he could be, but he was a lovely little man, and we'll talk about him. I always felt so proud when I could tell people, yeah, you know what? Came from my neighborhood, lived down the block from me, and went to my high school.
Newtown? Went to Newtown?
That's right. Boy made good.
Always kept those Hamisher roots. He's just a wonderful man, and I'm so sad. His father sold insurance. I remember I used to communicate with him back before the internet. We'd actually write letters and what have you.
Wow.
And I was
his mother Etta. The building he lived in, obviously still there. It's on 32nd Avenue between 89th and 90th Street, on the north side, right across the street from 148. Right across the street from 148, and as a kid, I didn't know that, but as I got older and found out, again, I would walk by and think of him immediately, and I was an AAA monitor who worked in front of that building pretty much my whole 6th grade year. So, those kind of things are connect the dots for me.
Yeah, you were a crossing monitor, as was Marty Rose, who's my boyhood friend, and who's does a show with me about New York City baseball on this very network. And you had the strap that you wore, right?
White strap with a silver
badge. You had a badge, and you got to lead.
We were power, baby. We were power.
Right. You got to lead. First of all, it was responsibility. So anybody who had that job, teachers knew who the people they could trust.
Yeah.
I mean, people crossing the frickin' street. These are kids.
Well, we didn't want anybody to die on our watch. You know what I mean?
Right. That's why I always tell Marty, I said, not one person died on the watch. As long as he was out there, I knew I was safe. I walked the other way. You walked towards our bakery. And
that's right.
I can't remember her name now. We talked about her. She'd give me cookies. We go in there. She always give cookies to the kids. On Northern Boulevard, the bakery on Northern Boulevard?
Right in the corner, 89th Street. It's now a bank. It's my mother's bank.
Yes, and we talked a little bit off air about how that neighborhood that we grew up in has changed. So much different than it was, but you know, you would think how it must be, including your mom now, 7 Jews left in
that's the only thing. That's the only thing that's still the same with the neighborhood. My mother being in 309, apartment 309. I'm thinking about having a bronze and hung outside the building.
Right. Can you imagine? This is basically Jewish, Italian, Irish neighborhood. It is now so delightfully Spanish, with an eclectic group of folks from
everywhere,
every Latin American restaurants and shops and this and that. It's really terrific.
The neighbors in my mother's building now refer to her as the American. She speaks a foreign language, English. It's fascinating.
Right. They don't call her the Weissedecher.
No. But it's remarkable. Look, she's 89 years old. God bless her, boy. She's still going and she takes practice.
Oh, yeah.
This woman, 89.
Wow.
Remarkable. But the neighborhood has changed totally. I mean, she was very excited when she found out she learned, my mother, there's now a Denny's on 88th Street, on Northern Boulevard, between 87th and 88th. She's thrilled.
Now, that has to be within the last year, because I was back there, right?
That's 6 months. 6 months.
Yeah, wow. That is a perfect place for it. Like I told you off air, I took an Airbnb in the Heights and stayed there about 10 days and just ate it up. Delis and the Jackson Heights Diner is still there.
Sure.
That stands.
White Castle's still there. Kentucky Fried Chicken is still there. I mean, the buildings themselves are still there. It's just that the names have been changed and the businesses have changed. But, you know,
to
she's
protect
still going to
the
90th
so
Street.
innocent.
Well, you know, the 90th Street candy store. Right, the 90th Street candy store.
Jack and Manny's.
Right, Jack and Manny's. If you walk in there, it's now a hardware store. No, I'm sorry, it's now a chicken place. It was a hardware store, but the floor, now it might have changed since the last time I was there about a year ago, was still there. The original floor from the candy store that you and I grew up in was there for years and years and years. Amazing. It might have changed now.
Don't read the magazine. If you're going to buy the magazine, buy the magazine. Don't read the magazine.
This is not a library. This is not
And it wasn't. It was a candy store. It was a luncheonette. And it was really nice. It had the neighborhood flavor. And there was there's something about Heitzman. We all have a resiliency. And a lot of us have escaped. You escaped to the West Coast as well. You went to the southern part. I'm in the northern part. What year did you leave, and how often do you get back?
Oh, when did I come out here to? And that leads me to my story, my first original story, personal story about Don Rickles. I came out here for the first time in 1983. ABC flew me out to test for some shows, and while I was away, my wife, who we had just gotten married, there was a new show coming on called Star Search. I'm sure you remember. And,
I do.
I wasn't living out here, but my mother-in-law, who was an actor, I'm sure I told you the story, maybe I didn't. She was an actor, and she had moved out here, which made it easier for me to get out here for the first time. She was on a show for Norman Lear, and so I was able to come out here and not have to worry about where I had to stay. But while I was out here, my wife found out about this show, Star Search, and submitted a video of me on a show, doing a show. They liked me, so I was asked to be to do Star Search in the comedy competition. And one thing led to another, and I got into the semifinals. And one of the judges, it was always on the night that you would work, there was always a celebrity who would introduce the comedians. And my first semifinal, I was introduced by none other than Don Rickles. You know, so we met backstage, and of course I was thrilled. And you know, he couldn't have been anything but nice. He was such a kind. His persona on the stage, Ralph, was the exact opposite of what he was backstage or off the stage.
Right.
The kindness, the heart. He was a guy from Queens. He was a guy from Jackson Heights. Never lost that. Sweet, kind, considerate, and just wanted to prop you up. And then as soon as you walk on, and then the lights would hit him, and he'd rip your head off. But that was who he was. He was a beautiful, the soul of the man came through, even though he was, you know, trying to kill you, pretty much.
Right.
That was my experience. So we spent the night together there talking about Jackson Heights and his mother, Etta, who was, at the time, I guess, had just left. This is 83. She had just moved, and she was still around, and she had just moved down to Florida, which is the way of all things. So he said that he never really he didn't have that much of a connection anymore but he had, you know, memories. But, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
That was my first experience.
Just to have walked the same path to the schools. He had to walk across the street. I had to walk the other way from 91st Street to the same, and then going up the Newtown Drag, walking the mile or so in the cold winters of New York.
These kids today, they don't know suffering. We have no phone.
Yeah, not only no phones, but there were times, those winters, and they still go on.
Killer.
Killer.
You've been out here a long time. You've been in California a long time. You know, I still, to this day, I still remember the winter mornings getting up, because we had to be at school at 7:15 in the morning, high school. And I remember the cold winter mornings, I'm half asleep, opening the outer door of my Northridge apartment building, and this freaking wind, this New York cold, hitting me in the face. I could still feel it. I still sense it. How it just pretty much woke me up immediately. Just brutal. Pioneers. People who stay back there. Wow.
Well, it isn't just the winters, too. You'd think you'd get a respite from it in the summers. I'd always go away to camp in the Poconos in the mountains or Rockaway. The family would go to Rockaway at the beach.
Yeah. Where there was air. You had air. You had air. You went to find air.
Right. There was no way I could live there. I went to summer school once, Bryan High School, and it was just, I spent my first summer in New York. And you'd take a shower, and literally the humidity, you'd need another shower by the time you were dressed. And I'm not exaggerating. And you're indoors, you got the air conditioner. Air conditioners didn't work as well as central air and heat work.
I grew up without. We got our first air conditioner in 1969. I grew up I would go to bed soaking wet in the summers. I would wet myself down, or I'd sleep on a wet towel, and I'd put a small fan over that would blow on me. I mean, I was trying to invent stuff. I was inventing my own air conditioning system, and we finally got one. But the thing is, for me, the
winters were tougher than the summers. And I couldn't live in Florida either for a number of reasons.
Yeah, my brother's down there. He's down there. He moved down there. He went on a college break. I met his now wife when he was down there for a couple of weeks. Moved down in 1980. Turned on his air conditioner and has never turned it off.
Right, never. Absolutely.
Never.
And you're breathing that kind of air, too. And it rains in the middle of the afternoon every frickin' day that I ever visited my mother or anybody else down there. It rains. But the weather pattern, though, I will say I was in Florida about 3 years ago, and the weather pattern seems to have changed a little bit. It's more mild, but there's nothing like California.
No.
Northern California. I've been down to Southern California. What do you see as the major differences in the major adjustments that you and I would have to make when they come out here? Differences.
Well, I think for you, living up in Northern California, living near San Francisco, to me, San Francisco's the only real city in California. You know what I mean? With avenues, big buildings, and you could walk for miles around the city. Obviously, there's a lot of hills, but I always found that and I've been to San Francisco. I love the city itself. I feel comfortable there, but it's more of a city. I lived in Santa Monica for 29 years. Now I live in Marina del Rey, which is the same thing, right on the west side, near the beach. It's just a different world. Look, when I was a kid and wanted to go to the beach from Jackson Heights, I had to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and take the bus to Jones Beach. What a bitch that was.
We go to Rockaway and we take 3 trains. It would be at least an hour and a half. Yeah,
that was
to get to the beach.
Commitment to the sun. That was commitment to the beach. Today I get up, I can just walk out the door. I'm at the beach in 2 minutes. I probably don't even go as often anymore.
And there's a piece of greenery around all the time. You grew up in New York. Although I discovered, because I left so early and I had such little access to the city when I lived as a kid, Central Park is a mecca. Unbelievable. We went back and
well, when I got out of school and started working at the Improvisation in New York City, my wife and I, she was my girlfriend at the time, we got an apartment. We moved into Manhattan. That was my main goal. I moved to 58th Street and First Avenue. So then Central Park became my park, just like 90th Street. We played softball there. We hung out there. We met there. It was my neighborhood park, and it's one of the most amazing parks in the world. In the middle of that borough, middle of that city, it really is.
Oh, absolutely. And as violent a city as it is, as hectic a city, not violent, but intense a city, the people go there and they let it all hang out. You might as well be in California, attitude-wise, when you walk around Central Park. It's
in the park, absolutely.
Right, in the park itself, on a nice day, you would think you're in California. All the pressures of the city are alleviated just by walking around.
The Sheep Meadow. You remember the Sheep Meadow? I mean, on a Sunday afternoon or a late Saturday afternoon in the spring or the fall, amazing. Just a beautiful, beautiful place to be, And then the softball fields, I played in the Broadway Show League for years with the Improvisation first and then Catch a Rising Star. And I was just there on Mondays and Thursdays. It's just, I think very fondly, look, once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker. I don't care where you live. I still sound like I sound. I still behave the way I behave. It's just I have better weather around me to do it.
Exactly. Glenn, you and Don Rickles on stage were the exact opposite. You are such you relate to the audience. Everybody's nice guy. And he was, the master of venom and all this on stage. Off stage, you're exactly, and off stage, you're not the person you are on stage.
I'm probably more aggressive. Yes, I'm probably more aggressive, a little bit more aggressive off the stage. Whereas, Don is the exact opposite of who he was on the stage. Yes, I never went there. I admired it, but it takes a lot of balls, and it takes a certain kind of thought process, to get away with stuff like that. He always wanted to be an actor first. He was, when he got out of the military, he was an actor, and he did a number of movies. He was terrific. He did the movies.
He went to an acting college in New York. I can't think of what it was.
Yeah, I don't remember either, but I know that had always said he wanted to be an actor. He always thought of himself as an actor. And I think so many times when he would go on stage at the beginning, he was acting the part of, the aggressive, attacking bulldog comedian. That was an act for him. Go off the stage again.
Well staged.
Totally different. Yeah, totally
Somebody
different.
described him as the best guest any talk show guest that's ever been on, the consummate guest. He's on Carson.
We all remember, if you didn't know him, and if you weren't in the comedy community, and you didn't know how he worked and who he was off stage, most people that know Don Rickles, and he lived 90 years. It's a long way to go. Most people will know him from his late night, shots with Carson most of the time. He was brilliant because he just trusted himself, and that's the beauty of a great stand-up comedian, to trust. It might not always work, but you take that shot. And him with Sinatra, that's what put him on the map.
He was the only one that could approach Sinatra in any way that way. I mean, he was the most standoffish of guys, the most ego. I mean, he was just frank. And Rickles would just have the guy melting. Great story.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a number of different stories, and I've heard.
Yeah, I'll let you tell the one with the date. That's it. That's a great one.
Which one are we talking about? I was thinking about.
He goes up to Frank. Could you come by my table? And I'm
right. Yeah, right. Not now, Frank. I'm busy.
Right. And I've been watching a lot of these clips of his interviews and what have you in the last, YouTube clips. The clip he did with Stern, he was on Stern in the last couple of years, and it was really as good as it gets. Stern is a very, very underrated guy in show business. I mean,
he asks provocative questions, and those kind of people, especially a guy like Rickles, would probably, I didn't see I didn't hear the shot, I didn't see it, but I'm sure it was, very honest and very authentic, and and Rickles was being Rickles. I'm sure he was.
And he paid such good homage to him. He stood through the entire interview, which was nice. And he admitted that, like we all do, that on some basic level, if you're from New York and if you're into comedy, and you have to admire him more than any other comedian. May not have been the funniest person to one's taste, but he was easily the ballsiest comedian that.
Definitely took shots, man. He took chances. I'm sure a lot of the stuff after a while became his pieces, but a lot of his stuff came from just riffing and just going with it. If he saw somebody in the audience,
we got to see him after he was accomplished and after he was quote making it. Can you imagine what it took to play these clubs with that kind of an attitude? And
here's the deal.
He didn't have comedy clubs per se.
Well,
go ahead.
He didn't really do the clubs so much, but he was doing the theaters, he was doing the casinos, and after a while, that people knew who he was and what he did. People would fight to sit up near the stage because they wanted to be picked on and ridiculed by Rickles.
Right.
Remarkable.
Yes.
He had a guy who worked for him for almost 30 years who would always come out at the end of the show and bring him a drink or whatever. And he was a black guy, and they were good friends. But I mean, this guy would stand when he would walk off. Rickles would do everything from slave ownership to half a human thing. It was amazing. And the guy, they loved him.
If anybody's a baseball fan, and most of the shows on my network are baseball shows, there's a thing on YouTube where he has all the Dodgers of the 80s. Lasorda brings him in to give a pep talk, and insult all the Dodgers. Bill Russell, Bill Matlock was there. He's talking black guy, and he was just absolutely destroying him. And these guys were breaking up because they know when you get, it was the honor of being insulted by the guy because you know he doesn't really mean it. There's no venom there, no actual venom.
He ridiculed every stereotype there was. He talked about, he used the language, like Lenny Bruce almost, but there was no cursing involved, but, he was he never apologized for being politically incorrect. And that's the beauty of him.
And this is a guy that would mock Reagan, both as a governor and at his inauguration.
Oh, sure. So, he did a roast for Reagan. It was great. Look, he became real popular with the Dean Martin roast, too, because he, just the stuff we saw on television was pretty intense, but the stuff from what I hear when they were not on, when it was not televised, was really dark, and he took it as far as he could take it, which is beautiful, man. I just
definitely missed. Just it's almost a sign of the times. All these folks are going. All of our childhood, everybody that was on Sullivan, is no longer around.
Well, I was watching some videos people were putting up in the comedy world here on Facebook, and people posted a shot of him on the Tonight Show. Carson is, at his desk. Sinatra's sitting next to Carson. Don Rickles is on the couch, and next to him is Ed McMahon. And I'm watching, and I'm thinking, wow, they're all gone. They're all gone now. Remarkable, because they were so alive and so real. And look, it is a generation that is past. It's a different time now, man. Comedy has changed. I don't know if Rickles would. I don't know how a guy like that would start these days. He would have to go so dark. He would be, a late night.
That brings us to a person that I'm going to ask you about, who is, I think, taking it a step further, and that's Larry David. Do you know him?
I do. I know Larry. I know Larry pretty well. We started out together. We hung out together a long time. Larry, different kind of animal than Rickles. Is that what you're saying? He's not taking his father.
No question about that. But the humor is different. The language is certainly different. But he's got the advantage of having cable when he was coming up, where Rickles was kind of locked in to a family format, and that wasn't him. Had he been able to have cable, I think Rickles would have exploded in the same way that Larry David exploded.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I'll tell you something, they gave Rickles a sitcom, I don't know if you remember, called Sharky. And he played a sergeant in the military or something. And my friend was one of the producers, so I went there one day, hung out with him backstage, and there were so many rules that he had to follow that he felt restrained that he could never. That's why the show for me wasn't a success. He just was not allowed or let to be Don Rickles. You know what I mean, on that show, because there were so many rules at the time.
People would have allowed him that. And,
he would have flown, man. He would have flown. Yeah, sure. He would have been if he was young and or he was like Larry's age at the time. I agree. Cable was the perfect medium for him, but came along too late.
Yeah. All timing, young man.
All timing. All timing.
Hey, would you do this again with me very soon? Because I enjoy your company.
I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to talk sports too. You know that. We always have fun talking.
Oh yeah, let's do that next time. And are you a Met or a Yankee fan? I forget.
I told you I'm a New York fan. In 2000, when they played each other in the World Series, I left the country.
Isn't that the way it always goes?
It's terrible. I'm a giant Jet fan. I'm a Ranger Islander fan. So I've always rooted for them not to have to play each other. And when they have this interleague play, I'm a purist. I'm an old time guy. I was happy in the 1900s, and it's just
that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, they're not changing. It's not going back. So I got to adapt.
No. Most we could hope for is sideways. So.
All right, but I will talk with you.
All right,
man.
stay above ground, young man, and we'll talk soon. And for those of you out there, I want you to stick around. Listen to the way I end my shows, that I don't have anybody to account for. This is just my show on the network, okay?
Good.
I implore people to keep their dreams wet, their humor dry, their kids at a military recruiting stations, and that includes grandkids, and off the laps of clerics that wear dresses.
Good for you. Keep going, man. Keep fighting that fight. That's all I can ask.
I got to keep doing it. All right, Glenn. Talk to you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Be good. Adios, everybody.